Okay, so you're a woman of faith. You know that God has called you to coach full time, and that's your dream. That's your desire. You want to start coaching full time. You want the freedom, the fulfillment that a career of coaching will allow you to have, to be more present with your family, be more present with your children, and just being able to live life on your own terms, right? And you know that this is what God has called you to do, and so you're not staying on the sidelines. You're not just sitting around. You're actually taking action. You're doing the things, you're showing up, you're creating the content, you're building your business on the side as you're working your 9 to 5. However, you'll show up for like a week or two, and you'll stay consistent for like a good 2 to 3 weeks, staying consistent. And then you find that you stop, you disappear, you're not as consistent as you would like to be. And in this live stream, I'm going to be breaking down how to stay in your business, even when life is chaotic. All right. As a mom myself, I understand. As a wife, I understand. As a registered nurse turned full time business coach, I completely understand how it is to grow your business the side. And I was able to resign in less than 9 months. And I've made mistakes after the fact. And so this is why my life's mission is to help other women to break free from the rat race of societal programming that tells you to go to school, get a job, work for 40 years, retire, and then live your life, right? It's like, no, I believe that moms should be able to be present in their home while still getting paid from their purpose work, which is why my goal is to help as many women and as many moms as I can to transition into coaching full time. And I help them to do that without chasing clients, without self sabotaging, or without sacrificing time with their families. And so I'm going to be breaking down in this live stream how you can stay consistent in your business so that you can finally transition, right? Because that's the goal. The goal is to leave that 9 to 5 and step into your calling as a coach full time. And so the daily dose is daily episodes where the I step before the Lord, and whatever He pours into me, I show up here live and pour it out into you. Dose is actually an acronym. It's divine overflow of spirit led empowerment, equipping, encouragement on your entrepreneurial journey. And so we're going to jump into exactly how to stay consistent. I have 3 points that I want to share with you. But before I even jump into the points that I have for you, I want to ask you a question. Now, you know that you're going to go full time in your business, right? That's the goal. That's the mission. That is exactly what you want. But do you have weekly systems or a daily routine that will build and sustain the business that you're praying for? So maybe you're praying for 10K months consistently so you can transition into coaching full time. But do you have the structure? Do you have the weekly system? One of the first things that I do with my clients is I help them to build out a structure, build out a strategy, build out a weekly, like systemize their weeks so that they have a plan of action. They know, okay, on Tuesdays, I do this. On Thursdays, I do this. On Saturdays, I do this. On Sundays, whatever, you're resting, planning, whatever that looks like for you in your life, whether it be however chaotic it is. And I get it. As a mom working, you have your 9 to 5, you have your children, your spouse. Like, I get how chaotic life can get. There's a to-do list that just never ends. But if you don't create these systems and business structure that allows you to really be able to go full time, build out your business and sustain it, you're going to continue to repeat the same year over and over and over and over again. You can have the goals, you can have the vision, but if you're not actually taking the time to execute it and set up these strategies that will help you to sustain it, you're just going to be hoping and praying and wishing and not seeing the results that you're desiring, right? And so how are you? Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy New Year. I'm also going to be sharing my word for the year as well. Happy New Year. I'm going to be sharing my word for the year, which is, I'll share it at the end. I'll share it at the end. All right. So the very first thing that you need to remain consistent is to just take a step, right? You're praying, you're fasting, you're doing all the things, but it's really important to take the step and take a step of faith. And I'm going to be looking at my notes. I have some notes here. Because I literally sent an email about this to my community just yesterday. And so I was like, let me talk about that here. And so the first step by faith, is you got to understand. So we know that faith, according to James 2:17, faith without works is dead. And so faith isn't proven by how much you know or how much you say, but it's really in your actions. It's what you're doing, it's how you're taking action. And faith really is proven by how you are preparing for the very thing you're praying for. So if you're asking God for consistent 10K months, but you're not preparing for those clients, if you're not preparing for what it takes for you to generate that consistently, then it's just showing that you're speaking by faith, but you're not taking the actions, right? And so you want to, preparation is always the way you're going to actually manifest the vision and the plan that God has for your life. It's really demonstrating to God that I believe that this is what's going to happen. I believe that what I'm praying for will happen. And nothing shows that more than when you're preparing, right? When you're preparing for what God has. So taking that step in preparation for what it is that God has for you. And so we're reminded by Noah, right? Noah, when he was building the ark, he started building before rain even existed. This is a step of faith, right? He stepped out in faith. And we're reminded by Abraham. Abraham, he left his family, right? He left his family behind, not knowing where he was going, but he still took that step of faith. He still took that step of faith, right? And then Peter, we know Peter, he stepped out of the boat. He stepped out on water. Even he just trusted Jesus and took that step. And the moment he began to sink was when he took his eyes off of Jesus and started focusing on the chaos around him, right? The storm around him. And so it's really important that as a believer in business, that you continue to step in faith and trust in God with the circumstances. You don't have to know, you don't have to wait for your circumstances to shift to take a step of faith, right? It's in the step that it opens up the way for your circumstances to shift, right? For your current chaos that's going on in your life. It's really rooted in your action steps, in the step that you're taking by faith to see it differently. And also we're reminded in Habakkuk 2:3, where it says, write the vision, make it plain, but not just to write it and make it plain, but it says, so the one who runs may run with it, right? And so it's one thing to write it down, make it plain, but are you running with it? Are you taking the step? Are you taking the step? And so what I found very often is you're not stuck because of a lack of clarity, right? Oftentimes as believers, we're praying for clarity. We're praying to make sure, we're making the right decision, but you're not stuck because of a lack of clarity. You're stuck because of a lack of momentum. You're stuck because of a lack of momentum. And so what you're doing is you're trying to you're just waiting to feel like you're waiting for the feeling to show up and to do things, right? To take action. But sometimes you're not going to feel like it. You're just not going to feel like doing it every day. And this is why it's so important to stay in momentum. And hint, hint, momentum. That's my word for 2026. It's staying in momentum even when you don't feel like it, even when the burst of inspiration just isn't there. You're staying committed to the call that God has instructed you to stick to, right? And so you're staying committed. And so that leads me, so that was step one, right? That was point one, step by faith. And then it leads me to point two, which is build structure by faith. Build structure by faith, right? So what does that look like? You got to understand that for you to really be able to sustain the vision and the business that the Lord has given to you, for you to actually sustain that, it requires you building out systems, building out routines. This is why I asked in the very beginning of this live, do you have a weekly system or a daily routine that will build and sustain the business you're praying for? And so something that's really common, my my suggestion is finding pockets in, because you're busy, right? You're working, you're still working, you're still building your business on the side, but finding pockets, like windows of times where you can actually go live, or where you can create the content, create the TikTok, create the reel, or whatever it is that will grow your business, right? And so you got to market your business. Marketing is the heartbeat of your business, so you want to find pockets of time to do that. What are the pockets of times that you're actually going to be serving your clients? What are the pockets of times where you're going to be working on the course? What are the pockets of time that you're going to be responding to emails, right? Like setting up your back end, like things of that nature. You got to find pockets of time for that. You've got to build a consistent routine to really be able to structure, to have the business structure to hold the business that you're praying for. And so let's see. Momentum is not created by random bursts of energy or effort, like I mentioned before. It's sustained by structure. It's sustained by order, by having a daily routine and a rhythm, and just allowing Holy Spirit to just lead you and guide you and direct you. And just pray on that and ask God to show you how you can structure your day to be able to build out and sustain the business that he's showing you, right? Because it's one thing to see it and to have the vision, but you got to run with it. You got to make moves. You got to stay in momentum. All right. And so this is how you stay consistent, because many believers, we have faith, right? But few have systems. Few have systems to actually sustain the business, that the Lord has been placing on your heart. And so faith is not like anti-structure, but structure is actually a biblical principle. And the Bible reminds us in 1 Corinthians 14:40, it says, let all things be done decently and in order. And so for the business that you're praying to be blessed with, for you to be able to sustain it, you need to have that. You need to build it in decency and in order. And that is by having structure in your business and in your life. All right. Because building out routines, one of my mentors, he's a billionaire, and he said, boring brings billions. It's doing the same thing over and over again every single day, right? Obviously, you're making it better, right? You're doing iterations of it. You're improving it as you go, but overall, it's the same things. It's the same things. It's, for me, it's going on my daily worship walk. It's taking my vitamins, drinking my water. These are just the little things that helps my body, helps to fuel the vessel so that I can show up and be as proficient as possible, right? And that's just on the body level. It's me making sure that I'm having my time with the Lord every single morning, right? Praying without ceasing, having the Holy Spirit lead me with every single thing that I do and say. And this is what sustains me. And not only that, it's on a mental level as well, because we're three parts, right? We're spirit, we're we have a soul, and we live in a body. And so we have to connect with the Lord, our Lord, through with a spiritual connection, right? We connect with him in spirit and in truth. And we have to understand that our soul is our mind, our will, and our emotions. And so being very mindful of how we are mentally and emotionally stewarding ourselves as well, right? And so not only do you want to steward your body well, right? Eating right, eating healthy, taking your vitamins, drinking your water, minding your business, but you also want to steward your soul, your mind, your will, your emotions. Are you taking negative thoughts captive, like the Bible instructs to do? Are you looking at how you're triggered, what your emotions are signaling to you, right? Because it's always just a signal. And so these are the things that you want to really be looking into on a daily basis, because it's really the day in and day out things, the structure that you're building, that helps you to be able to steward your business and to grow your business and to grow with your business, right? And so you want to commit your works to the Lord, and he will establish them. That's Proverbs 16:3. So you have to take action. You got to stay in momentum. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 21:5 that the plans of the diligent lead to abundance. And so if you're praying for a business, but you're not planning and you're not preparing and you're not actually propelling and taking action, Happy New Year. Happy New Year, my love. You're not planning and taking action, you're not building the structure to sustain it, then you're just talking, but you're not actually doing it, right? So the Proverbs 31 woman, she planned, she scheduled, she invested, she worked with strategy. She worked with strategy. And Nehemiah, we know he was building the wall, but he didn't just pray for a wall, he built it with, he had a plan, he had an order, and he went out and he day by day, he was building that wall. And when distractions came, when the enemy came and was trying to get him off of his assignment, he said, nope, I cannot come down to you. I'm doing a good work. And so I'm doing a great work was what he said. Hi. He said, I'm doing a good work. And so he didn't, this, in the same way, you do not want to succumb to distractions when you're building. All right. So yeah, routines are not restrictive. They are the release valves for the life of freedom you desire. All right. It really is. And like I mentioned earlier on, but when I started this live, I've made several mistakes. I was able to transition into my business full time. I went from a registered nurse in the ER and as to a coach, and I was able to transition with less than 9 months. However, there were a lot of things that I learned after the fact, and I've been working now full time for 4 years. And there's so much that I've learned after resigning that I now teach my clients, because there were so many belief blocks that I had to overcome, so many mistakes that were happened that I did, that I now prevent my clients from taking and making the same mistakes because I've already made them. And so building your business, building a structure to sustain your business is very important. And so that's the second point. The third point that I want to make is sustain by faith, right? So it's one thing to step by faith, another thing to build by faith. And then third, you want to sustain it by faith. And you sustain momentum by understanding. And I touched on this earlier, and it took me some time to realize this, but recently I was actually coaching some clients, and as I was coaching them, I also got breakthrough, because I listen, I am a product of my own product. What the tools and the resources that I help my clients with is the same tools and resources that I use and still use daily, because they work. And it doesn't matter what stage of business you are, whether you're just starting, whether you're trying to hit your first 10K months consistently, or you're scaling to 50K months, 100K months, it doesn't matter. With every new level of business, you need a new belief system that's going to sustain that business, right? And so what I realized, what the Lord revealed to me by the grace of God, was that whenever I get bored with something, I stop. And I think it's just basic human nature, right? That's just basic human nature. Like you're bored with it. You're like, I'm tired of doing this now. What? That right there is the key. That is the key. And I mentioned before how my mentor, he's a billionaire, and he's like, boring brings billions. And that's what it is. It's in the boredom. It's doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? Sustaining by faith. Sustaining by faith. Because when you are in momentum and you're doing the same things over and over and over again, this is where you get bored, right? You get bored with it. Boredom means that you're mastering it. Boredom means you are mastering it. And one of my other mentors, Myron Golden, my coach, he says, money follows mastery. And so the way the Lord was revealing it to me, he's like, Janelle, like when you get bored, you stop. And I need you to keep staying momentum, which is why momentum is my word for 2026. My momentum. Let me know in the comments also what your word is for 2026. Momentum is my word for 2026. The Lord showed me Momentum leads to mastery, which leads to multiplication. And I had another coach who said that. She's like, when she's bored, she realizes that's when she masters it, and that's when her message becomes known. Right? That's what she's like. She's like, that's when my message becomes known. Like, people are starting to now know me for that message. And so when you feel like you're repeating yourself over and over again, your audience doesn't feel like that, right? But it's in the mastery of your message that your brand becomes known for that. And so once your brand becomes known for that, that's when the multiplication happens, right? And so momentum, your everyday, day in, moment by moment momentum is what leads to mastery. And from that mastery comes the multiplication. All right. And so momentum, hello, how are you? How are you? So momentum is staying faithful when emotions fade. Momentum is doing it again, even after a bad day, right? Even if you're posting and there's crickets, show up again, stay in momentum, keep going, don't stop, post again, right? Even when you're bored, right? Momentum is consistency, even in boredom. Keep going. Your momentum has to be protected, and it's protected by building out structure, building out systems, and building out routines, right? That is how you're going to see the business breakthrough. Don't stop when it gets bored. Keep going. That is where mastery comes in. That is where mastery comes in. And as a result of mastery, that is the multiplication. That's when the money flows. All right. Because the moment that the moment that you start, you're going to find so many distractions. I titled this live, how to stay consistent in your business, even when life is chaotic. Because trust me, when you're right at the brink of breakthrough, that's when the enemy is going to come with all these distractions. All right. Life is going to start happening. When you're gaining traction, when you're staying in momentum, when you're gaining mastery, life is going to happen. There's going to be distractions. There's going to be discouragement. There's going to be disappointment. There is going to be attacks that want to slow you down, but it's so vital that you stay in momentum. All right. And so that's what I have for you today. This is the year that you stop starting and stopping, right? No more starting and stopping. This is the year that you stay in momentum. Stay in momentum. All right. And so I want to invite you into the first step of my Resign coaching program. And inside of my Resign coaching program, the very first step is the resignation roadmap. And so for you, this is where we decide, okay, when do I want to resign by, right? 2026 is the year you want to resign. Okay, what is that resignation date? We reverse engineer. We look at your offers. We look at your conversion rates, your numbers, and we look to see, okay, how much do you want to make per month? And we look at the offers that you currently have. If you have to build out a new offer, like whatever that is, and we're able to reverse engineer to really come up with a strategy so that you can resign in 2026. And so this is the resignation roadmap call. Thank you. So yeah, that's the resignation roadmap call. That's the very first step of the Resign acronym. And we go into the E is eradicate subconscious belief blocks. The S is we set up your signature offer creation. The I is we integrate your story selling messaging. The G is where we generate sales with the simplified sales funnel. And then the N is nervous system regulation as you grow. All right. And so that is the Resign program. That is the work that we do. And for you, the very first step is that resignation roadmap strategy session. And so the link will be in the description below. I'm going to go ahead and jump off of here. Let me know if you have any questions at all. Before I go, I'm going to tell you, just as God told me, put one foot in front of the other, step out on faith, and trust God for the next step. But this is how you stay consistent in your business, even when life gets chaotic. I love you, and I'll see you in the next live. Happy New Year. Hello. Bye. Happy New Year.